jump away. Out of Kachuk, keeping it alive. Carlo can't grab it. It comes to Verhaeghe. Turn, shoot, scores! Carter Verhaeghe! And the Panthers have eliminated the Boston Bruins!
That moment right there is when everyone in the hockey world should have stopped doubting the Florida Panthers. Yet, after making NHL history and going on a Cinderella run to the final, many people came into this season doubting whether or not they will even make the playoffs. Fast forward to the current day, the Panthers are still driving teams mad with their style of play, and it's a problem for the rest of the NHL. Heading into the season, it made sense for the NHL and fans everywhere to predict that the Florida Panthers were likely to regress. After all, last year they squeaked into the playoffs by 1 point and then proceeded to get one of the greatest goaltending performances that we've ever seen in 3 rounds to propel them to the Cup final. Combine that with some big-time injuries to start the season and the exit of some key players, it only made sense that the Panthers would struggle out of the gate. Except the Panthers have been steadily one of the best teams in the league all season long, and here's why. The Panthers can play any style of game, whether it's a run-and-gun offensive shootout or a physically demanding defensive matchup. Florida usually comes out on top of both styles while finding a way to piss you off in the process. When teams play the Florida Panthers, they must be prepared that they are entering a war. That's because the Florida Panthers are an aggressive juggernaut. Ever since day one, Paul Maurice wanted to instill a level of smart aggression to the Panthers' play. We saw this a lot in last year's playoffs with how they suffocated teams on the forecheck, and that has certainly carried over into this season. Despite new personnel and key injuries to start the year, every Panther has bought into the system and supports each other effectively throughout all 4 lines. In the offensive zone, the Panthers run a 2-1-2 forecheck, and they maybe do it better than anyone in the league because Maurice allows his players to feel the game. Watch here as defenseman Dmitry Kulikov steps up twice to first keep the puck in the zone, and second to completely stuff the breakout for Philly. The key here is that both times when he makes that aggressive pinch, he has the proper support in place to feel comfortable to do so. When Florida dumps it in, the opposing team rarely has a clean exit out of the zone. Because every Panther player knows their responsibility, their support at every option. Here against Pittsburgh, they dump the puck in to initiate their forecheck, and right away, Florida's winger presses to seal the wall and take away the Penguins' winger as the first breakout option. The Penguins' D is then forced to reverse with Florida's F1 and F2 pressuring. The far side D steps up to apply pressure, and F3 is there for support like clockwork. There's so many examples of this that when you watch them play next, it'll become glaringly obvious to you with how well they play structurally. This level of freedom that Maurice gives his defenders to be aggressive almost allows them to play the system on autopilot and really rely on their feel of the game to make quick decisions. It's this calculated aggression that makes it so hard for teams to escape their zone with possession. Teams are forced to rush their breakouts, and that ultimately creates more turnovers for Florida to regain possession and send it back in deep for the next wave of forecheckers. Now, part of what makes this aggressive system work so well for the Panthers is their physicality. The Panthers have absolute punishers on their team. Guys like Bennett, Cousins, Kachuk, and Lomberg finish their check almost every single time, and that instills a fear into defensemen to make them rush their decisions to avoid getting absolutely crushed. Defenders will rim the puck or force a play up the boards when they feel the Panthers are breathing down their neck, only to realize that they sent a grenade along the wall to the winger who was instantly met by pressure. Florida makes you earn every inch of the ice, whether it's in post-whistle scrums or with some questionable antics. Their entire identity is being extremely difficult to play against. That type of style is one that is extremely beneficial come playoff time, and that's why this team looked like a completely different animal in the playoffs last year. There's a reason why some teams just have so much success in the regular season and it doesn't quite translate in the postseason. And that's because when the playoffs roll around, the game naturally caters to teams and play styles very similar to the Panthers. Florida, fortunately, has the perfect blend of skill and toughness that drives teams absolutely nuts. All of Florida's top players can marry a skilled game with physicality. The leader here, of course, is Matthew Tkachuk, who does both perhaps better than anyone in the league, but then you have players like Bennett, who can also make plays and run through you in the process. Combine that with one of the most intelligent players in the game in Alex Barkov, His defensive awareness allows everyone on the ice to be extremely aggressive, knowing that he will be there for support. Now, Florida's success can also be attributed to a breakout performance like Sam Reinhart. With Reinhart being second in the league for goals and first in power play goals, he's become the perfect trigger man for Florida's system. When 5-on-5, he's scoring goals as the high man after Florida's aggressive forecheck creates a turnover. But with 22 of Reinhart's 39 goals coming on the power play, he's become a dominant force in the bumper position. Very similar to how Kucherov tees up Braden Point with a quick pass on Tampa's power play, Tkachuk is frequently doing this for Reinhart in different ways. A quick shoulder check to read the traffic is usually followed up by a perfect one-touch pass to Reinhart in the bumper before any killers can break up the play. Florida's evolved and aggressive offensive system has made them one of the most dangerous teams in the NHL, but you can't talk about their success without talking about Sergei Bobrovsky. With a .914 save percentage and a 2.42 goals against, he's at the heart of what frustrates opponents the most about Florida. In their own end, Florida plays a sound defensive game, but like any team, they give up their fair share of chances, and usually Bobrovsky is there to save the day. For him to play like he did in last year's playoffs is simply unsustainable over the course of an 82-game season. But this year, he's been consistently good for the Panthers, and that's given them the regular season success that they just didn't have last season. The 2024 Panthers have returned as a more evolved form of themselves. Now, does that mean they're a guarantee to win it all? Probably not. But what's a guarantee is that this team is going to be a nightmare to play in a 7-game series. However, even if this is the one squad that teams are praying not to go up against in a playoff matchup, the Florida Panthers themselves should know better than anyone that once the NHL playoffs start, absolutely anything can happen.